of controversy over about 0.4 miles of road. Really?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Yeah, people love a parade, and they love the 4th of July parade in Bristol. They didn't love some of the changes that the committee made, and they were reversed. The play-by-play of that comes from the parade chairwoman tonight, Fran O'Donnell, who's been gracious enough to come in and explain what the heck happened in Bristol over the last couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. Welcome in to My State of Mind, back here for original programming this week, all for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday and on Friday. There's a bunch of stuff that's happened. By the way, that football, I don't have any video today, but that game between Arizona and Green Bay is one for the ages. You know, you're paid, and Kev's directing again, you know, the #1 Patriot fan here, at least in the building. I told him it's very boring. Watching the Patriots win now is very boring, predictable, boring. You know, doesn't have the kind of drama that we saw. Holy cow in Arizona the other night. Let's go to the rundown and just kind of check out some of these things that happen. Now, look, call it me not being able to get over something, or call it Rhode Island missing the broad side of the barn on what they ought to be focused on. You determine which. But this was a disgraceful hearing Thursday night, and because we had repeat programming on Friday and Monday, I haven't had a chance to kind of get into this. The headline from the 38 Studios Oversight Committee, it was just brutal, just brutal. Here's a little bit of a wrap up on what happened there.
Strong words from Stephen Costantino on 38 Studios.
I was not responsible for granting any benefits of any kind to 38 Studios.
He was the House Finance Committee chairman when he wrote the legislation that led to the funding of the video gaming company. He says he played no role in specifically bringing 38 Studios to Rhode Island.
I have no personal gain in 38 Studios and never have.
Questioning by the House Oversight Committee targeted what he knew about the $75 million taxpayer-backed loan that ended up going to 38 Studios.
Certainly this is about getting the answers so we can move forward.
My involvement in this was simply as a chairman of finance, and my role as the chairman of finance in doing my duty in that role.
Costantino says he wasn't the one responsible for checking the company's finances, analyzing their business plan, or investigating the video gaming industry. That fell on the Economic Development Corporation.
I was asked to write a piece of legislation. I thought there were safeguards in the legislation. Those safeguards were not followed.
Listen, Steve Costantino was in concert with the Speaker of the House, Gordon Fox, who, by the way, is in jail right now, responsible for literally pulling the wool over the eyes of the entire legislature and putting together and passing legislation that inevitably was designed for one company, 38 Studios. All the other rigmarole about what he tried to do and how he tried to protect is a bunch of bunk. Absolute bunk. In fact, he had the unmitigated gall at this conference, at this oversight hearing, to actually say that he couldn't remember who was with him when they took the 40-minute drive to Kurt Schilling's Massachusetts company before he came to Rhode Island. With the speaker, urgent trip, 4 people in the car, couldn't figure out who the other 2 were. Sat in a meeting for 2 hours with 2 other people in addition to the speaker, couldn't remember who they were. Everything was conveniently a problem of memory for Stephen Costantino. He actually had the unmitigated gall to suggest that if someone had just asked him if this was for a specific company or 38 Studios, that he would have said yes. He pointed to news accounts that had been published that state government was talking to 38 Studios, but nobody put those 2 things together under this loan guarantee debacle. And then he actually suggested this. Listen to this off the Capitol television feed.
Even if everybody knew it was for 38 Studios, I'm not sure it wouldn't have passed. All right. Tends to be this, admiration of sports figures and, but it may have even had more support.
We don't need these hypotheticals. Can you imagine a floor debate over $75 million put for one company? I don't care if it was the Bloody Sock Hero or the Lord himself. Nobody would have supported that. Nobody would approve putting those eggs in one basket. Nobody. the public outcry, the good government reaction would have been unbelievable. It was a really disappointing hearing. The House Oversight Committee is a failure. They're going through the motions. The Speaker of the House thinks it's a terrific exercise because he's done enough to get a headline, bring in one key person under subpoena to talk about it, and to be able to say, hey, listen, we had our oversight. No, you know what you did? You ran a scam. We need to have really, really investigated this thing in a way that Washington would have done for a major scandal. Because we didn't do that, we still have a reputation for protecting corruption. And that's why we go to this next thing where the Brookings Institution is getting all sorts of attention for its grant-funded report that just came out today. Here's the headline that people are looking at. In fact, there's a couple that we have here that talk about this big project. And what it really is about is you know, some private grant money coming to the state of Rhode Island to kind of give us a view of how we can turn around this economy. And you know, it's you know, the governor reacted to it. She accepted the report. She reacted to it. And actually, she said some pretty smart things in the middle of a diatribe on a whole bunch of things the report has in it. Listen to at least a concept that she might actually be getting.
Today was really a call to action for our private sector, for governments, for mayors, for me, the governor, to work even harder to make sure Rhode Island families aren't left behind. And so that means upskilling people, making sure we have skill programs that train people for these jobs that are available, making it easier and cheaper to do business in Rhode Island. We have made some steps. We have to do more. Looking again at our tax code, are we competitive? So, you know, over time, this won't happen all overnight, but over time we have to hit on all these cylinders to make Rhode Island a place of growth in these industries.
She's starting to get it. What we need is a rate card and a reputation. Now, our reputation has been hurt by this 38 Studios thing all across the country for people who want to do business here. It's not the only thing. We've got a corruption cronyism problem that is kind of legendary. But we've done nothing to fix that, and she's done nothing to fix that, despite campaign promises that she would. But secondly, we need a rate card. Just a rate card. I mean, we don't need to pick industries like you would pick a hobby. What we need is create a level playing field, have a tax program that's equitable for every investor here or coming here, and make it simple, and let business grow organically. I don't need a 195-page report to tell me that, and neither does the governor, and neither do you. In the meantime, we got a crucial couple of weeks coming up here because the tolls are bearing down on us. Tim White has this story after a discussion with the Senate President this weekend on Newsmakers.
The timing of any bill is largely out of Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed's hands. She's made it clear that after last year's fiasco, she wants the House to take first crack at any roadworks legislation.
The bridge repair funding plan, Roadworks, which calls for tolling large commercial trucks, is clearly dominating the behind-the-scenes talks at the State House.
Where the discussion has been around is how do we finance that.
Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed says she expects tolls to be part of the legislation, but thanks to an influx of federal money, the state will use a different kind of borrowing called a Garvey bond, which she says should ease concerns that truck tolls would later become tolls on regular passenger vehicles.
What that does is take that fear away, because not only will it require legislative and political debate and approval, but the actuality is we can simply slow down the projects if the revenue projections aren't met.
The spokesperson for House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello tells Target 12 because of the financing changes, the bill is taking longer than they thought. He says, I don't think it will be the end of January before anything is approved, but we're getting there.
The Rhode Island Truckers Association, of course, continues to oppose any toll plan. They point to a study they conducted which says that toll revenue will be much less than the governor's office predicts. They say part of the reason is because truckers will simply avoid going through Rhode Island. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, Eyewitness News.
The president has herself convinced that if you change the bonding and borrowing mechanism inside the concept of tolls, that it'll take care of everything. Don't take your eye off the ball here, folks. Tolls are the problem. And the idea that, hey, you know what, it's going to be a lesser proclivity for the General Assembly to want to move it to cars because we can gear back on the borrowing. Well, I thought that the bridge infrastructure work was emergent. By the way, what's worse, Gina Raimondo's plan to keep an intra-financial plan of tolls raised revenue for bond repayments, for bridge work, or a General Assembly general budget that sucks in toll money? It's not an easy choice, but I'll tell you, neither work. The tolls will be a marketing message to America in the wrong direction for the state of Rhode Island. All right. Speaking of messages, so even the Brits now are having a little tizzy over Donald. Headlines and stories and all that kind of stuff. Real quick, you just got to get a kick out of this. They really have their panties in a bundle across the pond.
Donald Trump has long been seen as a brash American curiosity in Britain, even back when he was promising to invest millions in Scottish golf resorts. Then his critics included Michael Forbes, who was refusing to sell the great dealmaker his farm. What are you prepared to tell him?
He's fired.
But not as fired as he would be by the petition which called for him to be banned from Britain.
Unacceptable behavior.
And that triggered this debate in a parliamentary committee, which asked one essential question.
Is this the kind of man that we want in our country? His words are not comical. His words are not funny. His words are poisonous.
His policy to close borders, if he is elected as president, is bonkers.
Donald Trump is free to be a fool, but he's not free to be a dangerous fool in Britain.
But should the response be to ban him or to invite him to come?
By the way, I played Turnberry that he now owns. See those high weeds? My ball was probably right there. By the way, the big message for Donald today is that Sarah Palin has endorsed him, only adding to the fiasco. This is becoming a circus the likes of which I'd never expected in a presidential race. Glenn Frey passed away this weekend, and I think, well, this one's a toughie. You know? The idea that so many people are mourning Glenn Frey passing away on the heels of David Bowie passing away is a lot about him and his music and all of that, but you know what? It's another chunk of my generation, maybe your generation, feeling like its identity, its history is just kind of going away little by little. It's a tough one. What a great band the Eagles were, no doubt. Where am I? Am I moving? I think it's time now to meet our guest. Have you seen all these headlines over the last couple of weeks? It has just been throw me one, Kev. I'm too fast with my headlines. So the national news is now picking this thing up. Isn't that great for the Bristol Parade Committee? I'm sure they're very excited about that. But here's headline number one. Okay, we're going to shorten the route. Here's headline number two. Oh, hell no, you're not. And here's number three. I guess we aren't. Fran O'Donnell is the chairwoman of the parade. Have you been popping a lot of Excedrin this last week or two?
No, I've been holding up pretty well.
You have?
I'm fine. I'm good.
It has been a little bit of a nightmare, hasn't it?
I knew when I brought this to the committee that it was not going to be a popular decision. I wasn't quite sure it would be so unpopular, but that's okay. We'll move forward. I'm hoping to channel some of that passion that we heard and get it to work for the committee. I hope we get the same support from those people or all of the people that objected, that we got in opposition to the reduction of the half mile.
All right, well said. When we come back, we'll lay out the story. If you didn't follow it, you must have been out of town. And we'll talk about how it happened, some of the good reasons that they were considering shortening the parade, and where we go from here. Stay with us. So here's a story that Kim puts together that kind of chronicles the whole parade deal.
Bristolians are big fans of tradition.
It's perfect. Why change something that has worked for years?
Because it's been the tradition, and it's always been that way.
That was the sentiment echoed by most of the Bristol residents I spoke with about the town's annual 4th of July parade. On Thursday, the parade committee voted overwhelmingly to overturn their decision to shorten the parade route. Those who live in town couldn't be happier.
It's so important to people. It's so important to me, and I don't think they should mess with anything that is so perfect to begin with.
The committee wanted to shorten the nearly 2.5-mile parade to make it more appealing to marchers. They had planned to cut nearly a half mile and have it kick off here at the intersection of Hope, Thames, and Washington streets. Instead, the 231st Bristol 4th of July parade will step off here where it always does, at the corner of Hope and Chestnut. Bristolians tell me you shouldn't mess with the country's oldest continuous 4th of July celebration.
I can understand both sides, but tradition is tradition.
There's no way to change it right now. All this year has been around.
Just happy that everything stayed the same, and Bristol will have its 4th of July parade, and it'll be a wonderful thing.
Kim Kalonian reporting. What goes through your mind when you see all these folks are so smart about this project that they probably have never lifted a finger to actually put together?
Well, I suspect that they haven't, but I'd like to think that maybe they've donated to the 4th of July committee and help us put this celebration on. Our budget is nearly $400,000. The town gives us 10. I believe we get a $5,000 economic development grant from the state, but other than that, we raise all that money ourselves. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
You made this move to shorten the parade route because you had some logistics problems, correct?
Yes.
Tell me about them.
The stretch of road that I was proposing to eliminate has been talked about back when I did the parade in '98. There's no roads in or out of that half-mile stretch. And we've actually had the Rhode Island State Police, Rhode Island Emergency Management, the Coast Guard, the Navy, including NCIS, and the FBI look at our parade route, and all have recommended that we eliminate that half-mile for that reason. So given when we realized in early October that Drum Corps International had not put our July 3rd Drum Corps show on the schedule, we started looking at other bands that we typically get, and the militia groups, for example, are older and wear heavy wool uniforms, and many of them have declined our invitation to the parade because it's too long. So I took that as, you know, maybe the sun and the moon have lined up just right, and I can bring this suggestion to the committee based on we're facing limited bands, and let's eliminate that section of the route.
The security issue is interesting. It's always been their concern, but they didn't step up to support you here.
They did support me. I first went to the police chief, the fire chief, the town administrator, and then later the town council, and they were all very supportive. For some obvious reasons, the police chief and the fire chief chose not to attend the meeting or to speak out publicly. The former police chief, though, had back in 2002, so that was what I was using as my argument.
If you hadn't had the complication in scheduling with the band issue, you probably wouldn't have tried to tackle this thing.
Correct.
But you seized an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Have you learned some lessons about process?
You know, I think I was criticized for bringing it to the executive board only a half hour before the general committee meeting. I did that because, as you could see, this was a pretty contentious issue. And before we even left that general committee meeting, someone had already called the press. So we had a press release ready to go. So the reason I did it in the same night, I thought it would have been unfair to the committee members to hear it out on the street. I wanted them to hear the proposal from me and the arguments from me and make the decision. And they voted initially 46 in favor and 9 against. But, you know, they just sort of, they were a little intimidated, I believe, and people started being concerned that the businesses that support us may be unwilling to support us because it was such a hot issue. So for that reason, we called for a second vote. And, you know, as you said, it was pretty overwhelming the opposite way. So, you know, I feel as parade chairman, had I not brought this issue forward, I would have been remiss. So I put it out there and people chose to ignore it, and that's fine. Our police department and fire department are phenomenal, and I have no worries about safety. This just would have made things a little easier, but it's not going to happen.
Some more thoughts and some of the good stuff about the parade. Stay with us. The process is important when you're trying to change a big public event like the 4th of July parade. You know, lessons learned can be difficult, but I do get a kick out of the folks who know everything about it and scream bloody murder, but have hardly lifted a finger to help it, other than just enjoy it. It's kind of the way it goes. I'll see you on the radio tomorrow at noon on WPRO. Thanks for watching.